Welcome to Fantasybites. I'm your host, Matthew. Today's video is what to watch for. In this video, we will be highlighting specific players to look out for during Sunday's games. First up in what to watch for is Deshaun Watson. The Houston Texans have struggled early on this season. They are tied for the most sacks given up in the league, which has resulted in subpar performances from everyone on the offensive side of the ball. So the question is, how much should Watson owners be worried about their QB going forward? Let's take a look at Watson's schedule for the rest of the year. Of the teams that Watson has left on his schedule, based on the rank of how many points they give up to the QB, Watson has about an average schedule going forward. He has 4 matchups against teams that give up an above average amount of points to QBs, and 7 games against teams that give up a below average amount of points to QBs. 2 of those games against tougher defenses are the Colts and the Bengals, who will most likely regress to the mean and start giving up closer to the average amount of points to the QB going forward. In conclusion, Watson's schedule going forward is pretty average, and some negative matchups have the possibility of becoming plus matchups going forward. If his offensive line can make any improvements, he should still end up being a startable QB in virtually every matchup going forward. Next up, we have Zach Ertz and Dallas Goeddert. One of the most surprising things we've seen so far this season is how Zach Ertz and Dallas Goeddert have been used in the Eagles' offense. Ertz owners have not been impressed with how he has been used so far, so let's take a look at the stats and do a little comparison. What we see is that both tight ends are around the same number of targets, it's just that Goddard has made the most of his targets by grabbing 12 receptions to Ertz's 8. What should give both Ertz and Goddard owners some hope for both of their performances going forward is that both tight ends are involved in more than 80% of the Eagles' offensive snaps. Not only that, Ertz and Goddard are number 1 and number 2 in terms of offensive snap count outside of offensive lineman and QB Carson Wentz. Keep starting Ertz and Goddard as long as their usage remains this high. Next up, we have the Minnesota Vikings. Minnesota is last in the league in time of possession, last in the league in QB completions per game and passing yards per game, and only 21st in the league in rushing yards per game. It is obvious to all fantasy football players that the Minnesota offense is spiraling, but both Thielen and Cook have somehow still proved usable. Cook and Thielen are the 8th and 10th ranked players in their respective positions in ESPN scoring. Hopefully going forward, Kirk Cousins' play at QB can improve so that other members of the Minnesota offense can start producing. Next up, we have one of the biggest matchups on Sunday, Seahawks and Dallas. The Seahawks and Cowboys have 2 of the best offenses in the league so far, and they will play one another in an early season matchup this Sunday. What's surprising is that both teams utilize their wide receiver 3 differently. David Moore has emerged as the wide receiver 3 in the Seahawks offense. His fantasy performances have not been great despite the Seahawks being in some of the highest scoring games so far this season. Moore and backup wide receiver Swain will continue to be unstartable for the foreseeable future despite Russell Wilson's prolific play at QB. The Cowboys' use of their wide receiver 3s couldn't be any more different than the Seahawks. Both Michael Gallup and CeeDee Lamb have 10 or more targets this season, where Lamb has taken advantage of his 15 targets, turning that into 28.4 fantasy points on the season. Gallup has a 10% advantage in terms of offensive snap count. We know that Dallas will be feeding Ezekiel Elliott and Amari Cooper the most at their respective positions, so it is hard to imagine that both Gallup and Lamb could be wide receiver 3s going forward. Keep a lookout this weekend for how they are used against a pretty porous Seahawks defense, because whoever comes out on top as the third option in the offense should have a very productive season going forward. Thanks again for watching, best of luck this Sunday, make sure to like, subscribe, and even share the content if you enjoyed it.